Welcome back. You're still tuned into the Power Station Energy 100, and we are busy with Econo Chat. Let's talk business with Mr. Daniel Steinman. Today we are focusing on rainfall, but to be more specific, water, as it is also the most important economic variable in Namibia. Mr. Daniel Steinman, before we get into it, can you maybe just tell us when someone says El Nino, what do they mean by that? I'm sure there's a few listeners that don't know.
Must I just translate it? It means baby or boy.
Okay, but yeah, you know what I mean by the question. Like, why El Nino? What is it about?
How long is our program?
We can make it 3 sections. It doesn't matter.
Briefly. Mm-hmm. From about middle 1960s, the meteorologists, I always know that word, they started noticing this phenomenon off the coast of Ecuador. So it's the western side of South America, and it's very close to the equator. And they noticed that every 4, 5, 6 years, by about Christmas time or in December, which is now summer in the southern hemisphere, the temperature of the water on the beaches of Ecuador and the northern parts of Peru increased to about 25 degrees Celsius, whereas normally it would be about 18, 19 or 20.
Yeah.
And this is where the name comes from, El Nino, the boy, meaning Jesus, the boy child, coming at Christmas. So this has led to a whole new discipline in meteorology. But we describe that phenomenon of the warm and cold cycles in the Pacific Ocean as the El Nino. It's called ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation. That's the whole word. But whenever you see it in an article, it's just abbreviated as ENSO.
Yeah.
And this means that there is, in the bigger global climatic pattern, there's this big cycle. And this cycle is anything 4, 5, 6 years. And it repeats itself all the time.
Yeah.
So the whole Earth, the oceans of the whole Earth, they get cooler, then we go to La Nina, and then they get slightly warmer, we go to El Nino. Now, we have this idea, I actually must call it a notion, because I've just spoken in this week to somebody who is an expert in local weather about the correlation between drought in Namibia and El Nino. And there's been good work done by the Australian Bureau of Meteorology. They are basically the leading experts in southern hemisphere weather. And it is now beyond any doubt that we are moving into an El Nino phase, having just come out of a fairly long, almost 2.5 year La Nina phase. So we've left the cooler phase, and we're now basically in the first baby steps of the warmer phase. The current forecasts indicate that the El Nino will be about 18 months. That takes us to the end of 2024. And it will not be severe, it will be of moderate strength. The average temperature anomaly being about 1.8 degrees Celsius. Now, to put that in very simple terms, it means that the water in the Pacific Ocean on the equator will be about 1.8 degrees warmer than what it should be for the duration of the winter in the northern hemisphere and the summer after that. So the coming winter and the summer of 2024. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
If one explains the stuff, you have to sort of keep your mind focused on, are we talking southern hemisphere or northern hemisphere? Are we talking cold phase in the north or cold phase in the south? But all this technical stuff aside, we have definitely already moved into El Nino, a new El Nino cycle that is predicted to last about 18 months. Now, if it is true that there's a correlation between El Nino and drought in Namibia, it means that we are moving into a 2-year drier period. But this has not been proven.
Okay.
This is more like Ofro story, popular notion that the farmers on the ground, they say, no, when the Australian Bureau of Met says it's El Nino, then it's drought in Namibia. It may be so, it may not be so. It's an observed correlation, but it's not a researched correlation.
Okay.
It's not something that's been proven beyond fact. And I called a friend and I asked him, what's your take on it? Because I actually found an article that he wrote about 20 years ago, saying that same thing that I expected a long time ago, that there's no proven correlation between drought in Namibia and El Nino. But El Nino is a drier phase of about 7 years. But you do get these 1 or 2 very wet years in the generally drier El Nino period. So if by all indications that we are moving into an El Nino and we can expect the typical manifestation of El Nino in Namibia, it means that at least from a policy point of view, we have to be prepared for 2 dry years. Whether it will be a full-blown drought, that I'm reluctant to say. I don't have the means to say that. The data is not there.
Yeah.
Or whether it will just be sort of a mild drier period in Namibia, that remains to be seen. But we need to keep one eye on that El Nino and on the predictions for what's going to happen in our part of the world.
Hopefully it will be a whole twist. But let's quickly go for a short break, and once we come back, we will of course look at what to expect.